The document had been buried inside a locked drawer at the back of her old campaign office, forgotten for years. When Tulsi finally opened it, her breath caught. What she found inside was not just financial data. It was the skeleton of a scandal. So massive, so filthy, it could collapse the very names that once stood untouchable. This was not just about money. It was about betrayal, lies, and the abuse of public trust. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe. This story is not just about Tulsi Gabbard. It is about the America you never see on the evening news. Tulsi had never trusted Gavin Newsom. Their paths had crossed too many times in backrooms filled with fake smiles and handshakes that meant nothing. But this was different. The papers detailed the California high-speed rail project, the one that had drained over $128 billion. Pages and pages of transactions, rerouted funds, ghost contractors, and invoices signed off by people who did not even exist. Tulsi's hands trembled as she flipped through them. But the final 3 pages changed everything. There, stapled to the back, was a private memo. It mentioned a contribution channel linked directly to the Clinton Foundation. A pathway where state money was filtered and redirected under the radar, disguised as infrastructure spending. She stared at the names, bold, typed clearly, no aliases. Newsom's name was there. Not once, not twice, repeated. Approved, signed, connected, and under that, a smaller signature. Familiar, Clinton. And not the former president. It took Tulsi almost an hour to steady herself. She could feel the weight of what she was holding. This was not a leak. This was an explosion waiting to happen. She thought about staying silent. After all, she had seen how whistleblowers were treated. The media would crush her. The party would turn its back on her. She would be labeled a traitor, a conspiracy theorist, a disgraced former member. But something inside her refused to stay quiet. There was a limit. And this time, they had gone too far. She did not call her lawyer. She called someone else. A former investigative journalist who owed her a favor. A man who once exposed a pharmaceutical ring and went into hiding. She needed the files secured. She needed a second set of eyes before the storm began. As they met in a silent parking lot, Tulsi handed him the folder, watching his eyes widen with every page he turned. When he looked up, he only said one thing: "This will destroy him." Tulsi nodded, not because she wanted revenge, but because she knew the truth was too dangerous to stay hidden. What she did not know is that someone had already followed her, that a camera had already recorded her every move, and that someone, inside the system, someone very close to her, had already placed a call, not to help her, but to warn the very man she was about to expose. The call was short, no names were spoken. Just a slow, calm voice saying, "She knows." On the other end, Governor Newsom stood in his private office, eyes frozen on the glass wall that looked out over Sacramento. He did not flinch. He did not ask who. He already knew. Tulsi had always been a thorn, but now she was a threat, a real one. And unlike before, this time she had evidence, paper, signatures, trails, the kind of material that not even friendly headlines could bury. Newsom slowly ended the call and picked up another phone. This one was encrypted. He called a name only 5 people in the state government knew existed. Meanwhile, Tulsi sat in her car, staring through the windshield. Her hands were still shaking. Not from fear, but from the weight of choice. She knew what this would do. The headlines would not protect her. The same people who once posted her speeches would now question her sanity. They would spin it. Disgruntled former Democrat goes rogue. Tulsi attacks allies out of jealousy. But the documents were not opinions. They were real. And buried in the financials was something even worse. A payment that led to a foreign company. One that should never have had access to state funds. One based in a country known for channeling political donations in quiet, illegal ways. The journalist she had contacted, Ray, was already scanning the files. He had seen a lot over the years, but nothing like this. His fingers paused at the line item labeled Consulting and Outreach. A single payment of $15 million, marked as urgent, routed through 4 shell companies in less than 2 weeks. Ray looked at Tulsi and said, "This is not just fraud. This is international laundering. This is federal prison." Tulsi did not blink. "I know." But the air around them had already shifted. Across town, a black car pulled into the journalist's old apartment, not his current one. They were looking for him, but they were a step behind. For now, Tulsi's phone vibrated. A message from an old contact inside the State Department. No name, just words. "You are not safe. Leave now." She looked up at Ray. "We are being watched." He nodded. "We always were." Back at the Capitol, Newsom was already working. Damage control. His people would leak a story tomorrow. A story about Tulsi's past. Her so-called military aggression, her anger toward the party, her mental decline. They would spin a character collapse. Make her look unstable before she could even release the files. They had done it before. To others. But Tulsi was not just anyone. And she had one advantage they were not ready for. She was not afraid. Any more dots, she picked up her bag, grabbed the folder from Ray, and said 5 words that would mark the beginning of a war. "I will do it myself." The next morning, Tulsi did not turn on the television. She already knew what would be said. The article came out before sunrise. Former Congresswoman spirals in paranoia, targets political allies with false claims. Her picture was plastered. Across the headline, the same image they used back when she ran for president, only now cropped to make her look cold and distant. The news cycle was moving exactly how Newsom wanted. She expected it. What he did not expect was her next move. Tulsi did not go to a press conference. She did not contact a network. She drove straight to a private meeting room in an old community library, the kind where cameras never came and only whispers carried news. Inside were 4 people. None of them wore suits. None of them had titles. But every single one of them had once worked in the system and had walked away because they saw what Tulsi now held in her hands. One of them, a woman named Carla, had once been a state auditor. She looked at the files for 10 minutes before speaking. "This is real. And if we release this wrong, they will bury you and everything in here." Tulsi nodded. She knew the risk. But Carla leaned forward, pointing at the foreign transfer. "This is not just California. This touches Washington. You understand that, right? If you go forward, this is no longer politics. This is war." Tulsi folded the documents again, slow and silent. "Then let it be war." By the time the sun reached noon, Ray had already built a secure digital vault. The files were uploaded, copied, backed up in 4 locations. Not on cloud, not on email. Physical drives hidden with people Tulsi trusted. She had learned the hard way. Truth needed insurance. Every word, every receipt, every number was now preserved. The timing had to be right. The exposure had to be surgical. Not just a leak, a strategy. She needed to control the narrative before the machine moved faster. But something strange happened around 2 in the afternoon. A private message came through a channel Ray thought was dead. Anonymous sender, no subject. Just one sentence. "You are not the first to find this." Ray showed it to Tulsi without saying a word. She read it twice, then once more. If someone else found it, then where are they now? Ray stayed silent, but he was thinking the same thing. If others had tried to expose this before and vanished, then they were not just fighting power. They were fighting silence. Tulsi stood near the window, watching the street. Cars passed, normal, but her eyes narrowed. A black SUV had parked across from the building. No one came out. The engine stayed running. She whispered without turning her head. "They are here." Ray closed the laptop. Carla reached for the folder. No panic, just a shared look of calm before the storm. "They are not going to scare me," Tulsi said. She turned around. "They are going to listen." The moment Tulsi stepped out of the building, the air felt different, heavy, the kind of pressure you could not see, but felt deep in your bones. The black SUV was still there, engine humming, windows dark. She did not stop. She did not look. She just walked, but she felt the eyes. Every step she took felt like a test. Would they move? Would they follow? Behind her, Ray and Carla exited silently, walking on opposite sides of the street, pretending they were not connected. It was the plan: scatter if watched. Regroup in a safe house outside the city. But before Tulsi reached the corner, the SUV door opened. A man stepped out, tall, clean suit, no badge. No name, just a voice that said, "You are making a mistake." Tulsi stopped walking. She did not turn around fully. She only said, "So did you, when you thought I would run." The man took a step forward, but did not touch her. "You are not thinking clearly. You will destroy everything you once stood for." She smiled. "Just a little. No, I am exposing everything you built on lies." That was it. She walked on. The man did not follow. That night, Tulsi and Ray reached the safe house. It was a small cabin, deep in the woods, where cell signals faded and silence lived. There, Tulsi laid everything out again, the documents, the timeline, the names. This time, she wrote it all in her own handwriting. Page after page, in black ink, like a personal testimony. If they tried to erase her voice, she would leave it in places they could not touch. But as she reached the last page, a sudden knock echoed at the door. 3 knocks. Pause. Then 2. It was the signal. Ray reached for the curtain and peeked. His jaw tensed. "It is her," he whispered. Tulsi opened the door slowly. On the porch stood a woman in her early 60s, wrapped in a long gray coat. Her name was Eleanor. She had not been seen in Washington for years. Once a high-level investigator, she had vanished after exposing defense spending abuse. People thought she was dead. But she had just been waiting. "I heard you found the files," Eleanor said softly. Tulsi nodded. "They are real." "I know," Eleanor replied, "because I helped bury the first version 10 years ago." The words hit like a wave. Ray's hands dropped to his sides. Tulsi blinked. "What do you mean, the first version?" Eleanor stepped inside, slowly removing her coat. Newsom was not the beginning. He was just the student. The real plan started long before him. "You just found the second layer." Tulsi stepped back. "There is more?" Eleanor nodded. "Much more. And if you are going to take this public, you are going to need more than files." Tulsi whispered, "I am listening." Eleanor leaned in, voice low. "Then I will tell you how this really started. But you may not like what you hear." The room felt colder, even with the fire burning. Eleanor sat across from Tulsi, her eyes not blinking, her voice calm, like someone who had rehearsed this truth for years but never had a chance to speak it. She said the first rail project was never meant to be built. It was a front, a brilliant, massive cover to move government funds into private foundations without detection. Tulsi leaned forward, her fingers tight around her pen. "Are you saying the rail system was always a lie?" Eleanor nodded. "From the very beginning. The land buys, the studies, the public debates, all a show. Every decision was carefully layered to distract while money moved in the background." Ray stood near the window, silent. He was thinking, calculating. "And the Clinton Foundation?" he asked. Eleanor looked at him, slowly. "They did not create the plan, but they became the key piece that made it possible. Their reach, their influence, the global face of trust, it was the perfect mask." Tulsi's thoughts raced. Her mind traced every news clip, every speech, every ribbon-cutting ceremony. All of it was designed to build belief. And underneath that belief, the money flowed quietly, never questioned. She whispered, "How did this go unnoticed for so long?" Eleanor opened her old leather bag and placed a single photo on the table. In it, Newsom stood shaking hands with an unfamiliar man, older, silver hair, eyes cold. Because the man behind the project, she said, was never in the spotlight. His name is Michael Dresden. He operated from the shadows. No digital footprint, no real identity. He built the original strategy in the late 90s. And every politician who touched it, knowingly or not, became part of his web. Tulsi stared at the photo. "I have never heard that name." Eleanor's voice dropped lower. "No one has. That is the point. He is not on record. He never speaks. But he pulls the strings." Tulsi sat back, stunned. "So what you are telling me is that I have only uncovered half the truth?" Eleanor nodded once. "You have uncovered just enough to make them panic. That is why they are watching you. That is why they sent someone to stand outside your door, because you are getting too close." Ray interrupted. "Why now? Why come to us after all these years?" Eleanor looked at Tulsi. "Because you did something none of us could. You kept the evidence. You did not sell out. You walked away from the party, from the power, and still kept your spine. You are the only one they cannot buy." The words hit hard. Tulsi had lost elections, friends, respect in the media. But now it all made sense. It was never about her. It was about control. And she had slipped out of it. She looked at the files. "Again, then we go public, all of it, not just Newsom. Everyone involved." Eleanor smiled. "You will need more than courage. You will need protection." Tulsi nodded. "Then tell me where this started. I want everything." Reporters stood frozen, unsure whether to fire their questions or brace for impact. Tom Bishop did not flinch. He placed the flash drive on the podium and said just 5 more words before walking off. "Release it. Let them see." That sentence echoed across newsrooms, campaign offices, and the deepest corners of Washington. For a party built on images and promises, this was not just a scandal. It was a collapse waiting to be televised. Within minutes, the footage and documents on the drive began surfacing online. No fancy editing, no added drama, just raw proof. Surveillance tapes of Hillary's private donor meetings, emails where she coordinated with foreign interests, voice notes planning the removal of dissenting staff, and even strategy memos discussing how to discredit Obama's healthcare legacy in swing states. The clips were clear, the words were hers, and the tone was unmistakable, calculated. Hillary's office locked down. Her legal team went into emergency mode. Inside her private residence, she stood in front of her mirror, holding her phone but not dialing. Her reflection looked back at her, cold, worn, and yet still undefeated. She whispered to herself, "This is not the end, unless I let it." Meanwhile, chaos consumed the party. Democratic leaders called emergency meetings. Donors froze funding. Governors distanced themselves. The White House remained silent, but the message was clear. Hillary Clinton was no longer untouchable. At the center of it all, Jake watched the coverage in disbelief. "She could have stopped," he said quietly. Valerie nodded. "She never wanted peace, only control, even if it meant destroying everything to get it." And then came the final twist. That evening, Barack Obama held a private gathering at his residence. No cameras, no press, just trusted figures. Michelle sat beside him. Valerie was across the room. Tom Bishop stood silently near the entrance. Obama rose to speak. "I did not want this," he said. "But silence would have made me complicit. This was not just about me. It was about the truth. And truth, when denied too long, turns violent. What Hillary did was not politics. It was poison disguised as leadership. He turned to Tom. You did what none of us could. You faced her head on. Tom replied, it was never just about her. It was about the system that lets people like her rise without consequence. Then Obama spoke the words that would define what came next. We do not rebuild the party by protecting names. We rebuild it by protecting people. Starting now, we clean house, no matter who it hurts. The next morning, Hillary Clinton released a pre-recorded statement. No apologies, no explanations. Only this: I have always done what I believed was necessary. If history condemns me for it, so be it. But do not pretend I did it alone. She ended the video by looking directly into the camera. Remember, power is never taken. It is surrendered. And just like that, the screen went black. The crack in the party had become a full fracture. And from it, something new and dangerous was beginning to grow.